Gurave Gaura Chandraya Harikaya Tarale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tada Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatruvishcha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Shri Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dandavat Pranam, Vaishnavis, Maharajas. So I'm doing the narration of the preaching in West Africa a little earlier this morning. I just finished my morning program, Japa and Mangala Arti and Shwadhyay and all these things. So because the clock went back and everything, so it just happens to be early. I just finished my basic morning program a little earlier. And so I decided to do the narration a little bit earlier. I was able to contact one devotee and get some updated information that's relevant to this particular section. This is number 6, by the way. I said I would number them, and this is number 6. But I wasn't able to get in touch. That's Pujapat Shanta Maharaj. He's in Texas now, and of course they're behind us sometimes, so he may just be completing Mangalarti and everything there. They may be getting prepared for class, I'm not exactly sure. But I wanted to check some other facts with him. But I figured I can continue on with the narration. I can always fill in some gaps. And as I mentioned many times, I'm doing this mostly by memory, so obviously, I want to make sure I've got the details. I don't think I've done any gross mistakes or anything like that, but still, anything that can be refined, and also to have the participation and contribution of those devotees who were so integral to the preaching there is always going to be nice. So we left off with a pretty heart-touching narration about the arrival of Pujapat Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj in Ghana. And we had spoken about his arrival and the ecstasy of the kirtan. And, of course, I also made in part of the previous narration that there had been a coup in Ghana. And due to the influence of the coup, there was some effect on the transportation and the gas and all of that. So we had been now up to that point, maybe even before Srila Bhakti Maharaj arrived, a couple of weeks into a shortage of everything. We could not get goods as we had been getting because the trucking from the farms and everything was limited. So I mentioned that devotees pretty much were surviving on bananas, groundnuts or peanuts, and oranges. That was, the staple of every day. But when Srila Bhakti Maharaj came, we were able to, I told the whole brown bread story, we were able to track down from a family we used to regularly get fresh baked brown bread from whole wheat bread. We were able to get a special loaf just because Srila Bhakti Maharaj arrived. They did us a favor. And I told a very heart-touching story. It was even emotional for me as a fond memory, that Srila Bhakti Maharaj, in essence, would not, he wouldn't eat the bread because there wasn't enough for all the devotees to have some. So he didn't want to be in a situation where he was being able to honor something that the other devotees couldn't. In fact, he took the bread from his own plate and put it on the plate of some of the devotees who were sitting around in the room with him when he was about to take prasad. So that's where we left off yesterday. And Srila Bhakti Maharaj stayed in Ghana for another maybe 10 days to 2 weeks. And every day he was participating in all of our preaching activities. During the daytime, of course, sometime we would go off onto different preaching things. We went down and we would meet with Guy Fitz, because as I mentioned before, he was, kind of a patriarch sort of person in helping us get established. Srila Bhakti Maharaj went down and would talk to him, and then we would go out and do other kinds of preaching. And by that time, we were also arranging, some media things and stuff like that. And I don't remember if it was in that trip or a later trip that he did meet Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, who had taken over the presidency of Ghana. So I can't remember if it was on that trip or maybe it was a later trip, but he also, that was some part of the preaching for sure. We also, because we had gotten this temple established and everything, but the building that we had was a building that we rented. We paid rent yearly to this gentleman. And Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was now looking at expansion in Ghana because the temple was successful. And already we had sent Gopal Prabhu and his good wife and some other devotees had started a farm community in Koko, which was not so far from Accra. So we actually went up to visit them. I had gone up there previously and stayed up for a couple of days and given class and everything. And Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj went up also and saw the farm community. And then someone had spoken to us about, a huge tract of land that was available. And I know Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had the vision of building a temple in Ghana. And so he wanted to go and look at the land. So I remember at least a contingent of us got together to go and take a look at the land. I don't know if that's exactly the place where the temple is now. It could very well be. I'm not putting everything together, memorized if that's the actual location. I believe it is. But anyway, we went out, we looked at this place. And I remember, because I'm trying to keep the compilation of stories together as well. And I'll have to backtrack to one story that's really funny. But anyways, we went out and we were en route to this place to see the potential of this land, to have a farm, a community there where we would grow food, become more self-sufficient and all of that, and eventually build a temple. So on our way there, we drove the cars till we got to a certain point, and then we had to cross a small river. And I remember not seeing any boats or anything. So it was like, okay. It wasn't a huge river, so it was walkable, and I would imagine also maybe seasonally, maybe because of the time of season or whatever it was, the person who was taking us there, insisted that we could walk it. We could walk across. It wasn't like deep to the point where we would have to swim at some point. But anyways, we did not dress for the occasion or anything like that. But since we were there, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj made the decision, we're going to go ahead and walk across everything. So I do remember starting to walk across the river. All the devotees are walking across. And our friend who's guiding us and taking us to the location turns around and says, if anything hits your leg, just stand still, don't move. So of course he waits to tell us that when we're close to the middle of the river. So I didn't digest that very well, because I don't know what he was talking about that could possibly hit your leg and that you would need to stand still and all that. So anyways, we got across and we saw the land, and actually it was really, really beautiful. It was a suitable place, very scenic. It was a little isolated. But we had vehicles by then and everything, and it would have been perfectly suitable, which I believe actually in the future became the case. I still want to have to check that. Is the place to build a temple and to have a farm and to accommodate both grihastas and brahmacharinis, everything. So it seemed like an ideal location. So there was some push to try to make that happen. The incident that I wanted to back up to, and I think we're starting off this morning with kind of a bang in terms of funny stories. When Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had decided to come, he did not, as normally we were doing prior to coming to Africa at any point, was still back at that time he needed to get shots to come. And I think many people remember, many times if you're traveling, you had to get shots before you went to a particular country for malaria, for different things. So somehow or another, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj did not do that before he got there. So when he got to Ghana, we were there one morning, and he was mentioning that he needed to get that done. So we knew of a clinic. I don't know if it was Mamantra Prabhu. Anyway, somebody recommended a clinic. And I remember at that time, Adams also, he was our driver. I think he'd been in Nigeria previously with us, but he was there in Ghana. His family was from Ghana. So he was there now. So we loaded up in the van. Not a lot of us, actually. I can't remember exactly who was on that little small party, but we loaded up in the van and we drove to this clinic. And Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he's not big on needles. I'm just going to, I'm going to say that. So Maharaj, he became, demonstrably a little bit tense about doing this. Not only doing it, but now he's doing it here. And instead of having done it, previously in America, maybe with one of the doctors or devotee doctors that we knew, life member or something, he was now doing it here in Ghana. So we pull up to the clinic, and it's, it's a nice place, everything. It's not super fancy or anything. So we go in, and, the doctor, has some other patients, so we're sitting in the waiting room. The atmosphere is becoming a little more tense because Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is becoming a little more tense about, getting these shots, right? So, he's chanting, and, from time to time he's making conversation. The doctor comes out again and says, "I'll be right with you." And finally the doctor comes out. So he tells Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, come on in. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I think maybe a couple of the men he had come in also. So we went inside the room there where he was going to get the shots, and we were sitting, on some stools, and Maharaj was on the little, area where you would get your shot. And, the doctor was, doing the bedside manner, where are you from, and so forth, so on. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was reciprocating, and he says, "Oh, yeah, and, are you from Ghana?" And "Yeah, I'm from Ghana. What part?" And, he replied. And then Maharaj said, "And so, you studied medicine here in Ghana?" And the doctor shook his head like, "No, no. He said, "Oh, so you studied in the UK?" Because a lot of, people from Ghana or from Nigeria, sometimes they'll go abroad to study. It's, it's a popular thing. So anyway, the doctor, he was preparing the needles and getting everything set up, and he shook his head again. "No, nope, I didn't study in the UK." So, he wasn't elaborating like to say, "Well, no, I studied here, I went to this school." He just kept preparing everything. So I could see that Maharaj was now becoming a little more, even more nervous. And he said, "So, did you study in America? We're from America. Which school did you go to there?" And so the doctor at this point, he's got the needle up, and he's starting to, tie Maharaj's arm in order to get the vein prepared and everything. And he does the alcohol wipe, and he's getting the syringe ready. And he answers, he says, "No, I didn't really, go to a particular school, but, in the village where I came from, everybody said I could be pretty good at this, so I just opened a shop." And he got ready to put the needle into Maharaj's arm, and Maharaj's face it dropped. It literally dropped. And just as he was about to give the injection to Maharaj, he says, "Oh, no, Maharaj, no, sir. I studied at this place, that place," and so forth. And he started laughing because I guess he could glean that Maharaj was really nervous. And then he had started asking a lot of these questions, I guess, to abate the nervousness of getting the shot. So the doctor, was in a joking mood or whatever. But the way he looked when he was explaining it, we were also sitting there with like, well, what's going on? Where did he study? Right? And then finally when he made the joke, and he wasn't laughing when he first said it, he said, "Oh, no, the people in the village, they told me that I was pretty good at this. And so I just, got a shop and stuff." And so anyway, long story short, it was like one of those funny moments, and to see Maharaj in different moods, and stuff was also, really, really enlivening. During Maharaj's stay, it was also very encouraging for the brahmacharis that we had staying at the temple, because up until that point, the kind of leading devotees were myself and Brajalila Mahamantra, pretty much because, they had not had any visitors previously. And when Kirtanananda had come, Kirtanananda Prabhu had come, then, it was a very brief stay, and there wasn't a lot of interaction, because, generally, it wasn't like, he was going on the morning walks and everything with us. So now that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was there, he was very interactive with everybody. He was going on the morning walks with them. And so, it gave them a model to emulate in terms of brahmachari life, renounced life. So they very much, were inspired by that. So, that helped to strengthen our brahmachari ashram or brahmachari community. Excuse me. Every morning now we're doing this hot lemon water and ginger and so forth, I guess, to keep any kind of, illnesses away or whatever. So, and because I'm doing a little earlier, obviously I've got the cup here. So the brahmacharis, they were really enlivened, especially, of course, everybody knows, Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's kirtan, dancing, very famous for all these things. So it was just an overall great inspiration at this point that, Maharaj had come to visit. Also, over the course of time that he was there, things had began to ease up, so we were starting to get food coming back in. So he was able to have a couple of really, really nice meals that devotees cooked, and I know Maharaj was impressed by how the devotees had developed in terms of their ability with locally sourced foods and dishes, and cooking things that were from the Indian style of cooking. So in the temple we had both things, and we had it pretty much done very well. So Maharaj was really impressed with that. He was also impressed with the devotees' study, sadhana, everything else. So Maharaj was very happy. And of course, that made myself, Rajalila, especially Mama and other devotees, very happy, because, you worked, doing service in order to make, Shri Guru and Vaishnavas happy. And because he was happy that things had progressed like that. And then we could look back and look that now Nigeria had been established and Ghana had been established. So there was also some talk now of moving on. But, I really, really liked preaching in Ghana. I mean, I felt at home, for one, and for two, I still felt there was so much more to be done. There were so many more cities in Ghana, and, the spread had already happened in Nigeria, where we had devotees branching out. So I wanted to kind of see the same expansion happen in Ghana. So, Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, as I said, after he was there, devotees were really fired up. So that was a great time to push that kind of initiative, and that's what we did. And so we had devotees start to branch out into Tema, into Kumasi, and just devotees were traveling various places, up into the Volta region. Devotees were expanding out and doing a lot of preaching, book distribution. Sometimes they would go out as a party and come back to Accra, and in some cases they actually tried to establish a preaching center in different places. So another thing that elevated things a little bit was the arrival of Srinath Prabhu and his then wife Parameshwari Didi, and she had given birth in Nigeria to her son, so they had preached in Nigeria with us for some time, and now they had come to Ghana. They were on their way back to America, but they came through Ghana first, and then they would go to London and then eventually back to America. And so for me, that was really nice, because like I mentioned in earlier segments, myself and Srinath, we're kind of kindred spirits in a lot of ways, both in music, being from the States and having similar taste in our backgrounds and so many different things. And he also was very much into studying Sastra and learning verses and all. So we had all these things in common. So he came, and as I mentioned, when I left Nigeria, there was a little bit of a tension, because he had been there for a while, but not so long, and I was leaving. So he had wanted me to kind of stay in Nigeria while he was there and so forth, but that didn't pan out that way. And I was excited, disappointed not to go to India, but excited to come to Ghana. Now everything had flourished in Ghana, and he had come and visited, so he was really happy to be there. We went out preaching a couple of times. So what I'm doing is doing a lead up into a couple of our preaching adventures. So one of the preaching adventures we had was that we had decided to attend a festival that they were having in Tema. Tema wasn't so far from Accra. And in fact, we used to drive to Tema sometimes to pick up flour, because there was a huge, I remember, factory or manufacturing plant there that made flour, whole wheat flour, and we would go and buy that. And we had started at this point making, chapatis, puris, our own breads and things like that. So we would go and pick up flour from there. So, but there was a big festival happening, and me and Srinath decided that we would go together and attend this festival, distribute some books, and do some preaching. So we left early that morning, drove, and I remember we kind of parked in a scenic place, and we chanted our rounds there and everything else. We did not bring, I didn't really pack prasadam for the day. So we found ourselves there when it came time for the festival that, you know, well, we were energetic, so we got out and we started preaching and distributing books, and we went inside the festival. They had different bands playing, they had poetry, they had different kinds of book sales and all sort of things. So, you know, we were doing what we do, you know, preaching, distributing books, and so forth and so on. So we saw two European gentlemen who were there also, and you know, we were preaching to them, started talking to them. It began to become a little loud inside from the music, so we stepped outside the venue. You know, we're from the Harikatha temple. We had a temple there in Accra. We were here preaching this and that. They were from Germany, and they knew about Hare Krishna, and they said, "Oh wow, it's amazing to see it here," you know. So we asked them what they were doing there, and they said they'd come there to study drumming. So immediately that was another, you know, sort of spark for me, because, you know, I had been a drummer in my, you know, sort of previous life and everything. So I was telling me, oh yeah, I play drums and percussion in particular, and I had actually, you know, also done some, you know, investigation into the cultural drumming here. And they said, yeah, that's what we came to do. We were going to the Arts Council and studying the airway drumming tradition, and we were also studying some other drumming traditions. So I said, oh, great, you know. So they had an apartment or a little flat in Tema, and they invited us to come, you know, and so forth. So we said, okay, well, we'll stop by later on. We're going to stay here and distribute books, but we'll come by and visit you. Just give us the address. So they gave us the address to where they were staying and everything, and me and Srinath continued to preach and distribute books and pass out, you know, address cards and all of that for inviting people to Sunday feast. And I know at one point we were like starving. We hadn't eaten all day, and we saw one lady there, and she was selling, and I had seen it before. I just, you know, hadn't gotten it actually. But what it is they have yams, and they cut the yams into smaller parts, not so small like French fries or anything, but just smaller sections, and they dip them in salt, pepper, and cayenne, everything. They fry them, and then they have a paste made from tomatoes and chili sauce and so forth and so on. And so we were just famished, and we said, okay, we got to get something. So we got a couple of those things and offered them. And when we ate them, we were like, I don't know if it's because we're hungry or is this the best thing that we've ever had in our lives. So we ended up getting a couple of more, and I remember the lady was teasing us. You know, she knew we were from America. She was teasing us. Oh, you like these very much, huh? So then she, you know, I think we had maybe 2 sets of them, and then she was continuing to cook them, and she said, I have some that are fresh hot, right? So I remember we got one more, and by that time we were, you know, probably carved out, you know, after eating those things. But anyway, it was getting a little bit darker, and so we said, well, let's go and visit these 2, you know, German tourists that we had met, and, you know, see if we can, you know, give them a couple of books, everything, and then we'll call it a day and go back to Accra. So we drove over to their flat, and they were really happy to see us. They invited us in and so forth, so on. And they said, hey, we're a little busy right now, but listen, we have a room upstairs. You can go upstairs, and, you know, I think prior to that, we had talked about music and everything. Said, oh, well, upstairs, you know, we've got like a whole bunch of different recordings, brand new recordings. So, you know, me and Srinath, we were like, oh boy, you know, this is kind of Maya. So we were going through the whole apprehension phase. Now, do we really want to go up and sit up in their room and hearing music and this and that? So anyways, we agreed. Now, as we went down their hallway, they had like drums, hand drums, congas they're called. and they had apparently gotten these drums handmade, and they were going to take them back to Germany. They had a van. They were going across land. They were going to take these drums back, I guess, and sell them in Germany. So I was saying, oh, this is really far out. So is this the business that you do? He says, yeah, we do this, and we import other things as well, and so forth. So I said, oh, it's pretty far out. So we went upstairs to try to wait for them to finish working. I guess they were doing some kind of packing thing or something. So we went upstairs, and we waited for a little while, and they had this huge collection of all kinds of music. And so, we found, contemporary artists and stuff that, both me and Srinath knew. And then, something else had happened. I saw a record. Now, mind you, I've been involved in, preaching in Africa for some years. And I haven't been keeping up with or interested in even, what's been going on the music scene for some time. But then I saw some albums that were out that friends of mine were on. So that piqued an interest, who's doing what and what have you. So anyways, Srinath put some of the music on. We listened to some of it. There were some older albums that they had there, Earth, Wind and Fire album or some other albums, and Weather Report and some other things. So anyway, we listened to some of these things. Then we're like, okay, this is, it's getting a bit much. It's a little bit Maya. So we cut the music thing off and we said, hey, these guys are taking quite a while. And I think, we don't want to end up trying to drive back in the dark. So we should probably, bid them adieu and, maybe leave some books and call it a day. So anyways, as we're headed downstairs, this huge, sort of wave of marijuana aroma hits us right in the face as we're coming down the stairs. And we're like, what? What's going on here, right? So we're like, get downstairs, and now we're trapped in like this little hallway section where those drums were and the front door. And we're calling out to these two guys, Haribo, hey, hey. And we're not getting any response. So, Srinath says, hey, let's just get out of here. We get ready to leave, and then they come to the front door, right? They said, oh, we're really sorry. We meant to come up and, spend some time with you guys. And so we're saying, we're like waving our faces. He said, you guys are religious. You don't smoke, huh? So we're saying, no, we don't smoke or anything like that. And so then we looked, and they had a whole other room full of drums, but they didn't have the heads on top of the drums. So the drums were just the open shell. The drum heads were on the side. And so you could see into the body of the drum. And in the body of the drums, we saw they had all this marijuana packed up in there. So apparently what they were doing was coming across and buying these drums as, external thing, and then filling up with marijuana and taking them back to Germany. So we were like, oh, but we got to get out of here with a quickness. So we, gave them a couple of books and said, okay, thank you very much, for the hospitality, everything, and then we were gone. And so then me and Srinath were talking on the way back and saying, just imagine if that would have been the day that the local police had decided, that they were checking these guys, and, so then we decided, okay, never again, never again to get caught up in any situation like that. So anyways, we got back to the temple and told the story. We told to Dr. Martin. We didn't really tell in general, but we told Dr. Martin how things had gone in Tema, and that we had distributed a number of books, and so things were successful. We went out on a couple of other preaching adventures like that, different festivals and things that would come up. And then, of course, Srinath, his good wife, and the baby, they went on. They stopped in UK, and then they went on from there to America. Now, another interesting story was that prior to my coming to Africa for preaching at all, as I mentioned, I was very much involved in America, which was, so the African diasporic religious drumming community. So that was part of something that was overall part of my, tenure as a percussionist and a working musician. Was I studied those things and I got involved in them, whatever. So anyways, one of the people that I met back in America who were proponents and had a whole little temple and everything was a man named Kimati Dinizulu, and his wife. She was from America, but she was Nana Oparabia. And so frequently I would go and, visit their temple. This is called the Akan tradition, by the way. Just like in Nigeria, they have the Yoruba tradition with Ifa. And in the diaspora, as the slaves moved, many of them went to Cuba and to Brazil primarily. And from Cuba, the Lukumi tradition, Santeria tradition developed. That came to America. And then, from different places, different traditions spread. So Akan also was the tradition there. There's many traditions in Ghana, but Akan is also a prominent one. So anyways, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of all the nuances of the traditions. But anyways, I used to go out from time to time to their temple to drum. So anyways, I came to find out that not too far from our temple in Accra, it was Aswan. There's a particular place not too far, that wasn't so far from us, that was up on a hill, sort of like a little mountain area. You had to drive up, and I remember it was a little circuitous to drive around the mountain thing there. But she had like a shrine there and a ashram, for lack of a better word, where she trained priests and all of these things. So I mentioned to Mama Mantra Prabhu that I want to go and visit her because she was always very kind to me when I was in America. So I wanted to go and visit her while she was here and let her know about our temple and, do some preaching. So as always, we packed up some books and some prasadam, I remember, and to give to them. And I remember we drove up to the mountain there. We went to her shrine and sat with her. And I remember having a really wonderful conversation with her. First of all, she was really happy to see me. She was like an elder for me. She's like a mother, figure. And I'm going to mention something that she said, before I left. But anyway, we got up and, we met other people in that community. And they had a very nice little, environment there and everything. So we sat outside. And we talked about the nature of the two traditions, Vedic tradition, the Akan tradition, similarities, and all of these things. So it was really, really nice. We gave some books and gave them some prasadam. And then she gave me a gift of some sort. I can't remember exactly what she gave me. But I remember before I left, she gave me this big hug. And she says, I've always thought of you like a son. Because actually her son, we look similar too. She said, I've always thought of you as a son. I am so happy to see you here in Ghana. And so forth. And I wish you all success. And then she mentioned something to Mahamantra too at the time, because Mahamantra's family actually, they're from the Ewe tradition, but his family was very steeped in the spiritual traditions of the Ewe side of things. And so when he was young, they actually were training him kind of to be, in that tradition. So he had insight into those things too. So overall, that meeting with Nana Parabia, her community, everything, was another very successful thing in our preaching. So I remember feeling very blessed that Ghana was somehow turning out to be the, sort of pearl for me of preaching in Africa, because it was everything from right there in the beginning to the flourishing of what's happening now, to watching it expand, the wonderful visit of Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and his continued inspiration, to keep everything going. Braja Leela also was very absorbed because there were many ladies who were coming, and she was also preaching to many men because she was senior devotee there. So, many of the men, they were also taking shelter and learning from her and so forth. So overall, it just was a very, very wonderful experience. We continued our preaching, nothing slowed down. But I remember that, as I told, I think in volume 2, when I was coming to Ghana, we came by road, and we came from Nigeria into Benin, and from Benin into Togo, and the city in Togo that we passed through was called Lomé. I spoke about the beauty of this place, the ocean on one side, and the ancient sort of Muslim architecture on the other side, and it was just such a beautiful place. I'd always promised myself that I would come back to this place, and we did a couple of times. But on this particular occasion, I had decided that I would come alone, and I would just come because, I'd been doing a lot. I just wanted to spend some time kind of absorbed in study and kind of, take a break from everything. So I remember taking a car and coming on the road and coming to Lome. And at that time, if you had American passports, you didn't need to go through any kind of visa process or anything because American passports were accepted. So I got to the border of Ghana and Togo, and I remember it's pretty strange. I was coming across the border. I would see this twice because one time I came with Brajalila and Mahamantra. I forgot what we were doing, but we were coming there. I know what it was. We were going to see some members of Mahamantra's family. That was going to be a second trip to Lome. But on this trip, I was by myself. And when I got to the border, when I got at the border, you could see across into Lome. So at that time, I saw all these people, and you could hear the call to prayer, Islamic call to prayer, and everybody was making salat. Salat is the Muslim prayer you do 5 times a day. So everybody was making salat. So in my mind, the atmosphere was like, oh, this is amazing. Because you saw all these people making salat at the same time. There's the ocean on one side. There's this beautiful architecture I talked about on the other side. So it was like a scene out of some kind of ancient, kingdom of something, So it was really enchanting and everything. So I was like, wow. So I got all the stamps in my passport that I needed and everything, and came on in, and I just was standing there because I was looking to get a taxi, right? But everybody was making salat, so I didn't approach anybody or anything like that. So anyways, after salat had finished, like no sooner than, everybody had finished doing everything, all these people stood up and said, change, 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 change. And I'm like, change? What's going on? All the people right there by the border were money changers. So they were all doing all this currency dealing right there at the border, right? And then you had other people with taxi drivers selling stuff. So it went from this tranquil sort of spiritual scene to this marketplace vibration, right? So I remember I had seen when I was coming through that first time, I saw a hotel. And the hotel was like directly across the road from the beach. And it was a pretty simple hotel, so I knew it was not going to be very expensive. And the other thing I wanted to do was be right there on the beachfront. I didn't want to go into the town of Lome and all of that. So I took a taxi, and I remember I had to, because I didn't know any street names or anything, so I had to tell them just drive slowly. I'll tell you where to stop. So anyways, he got me to the hotel and everything. We found the location. I went ahead and checked in and everything, and it was not expensive, and that was the other big reason I stayed there. We were very conscious about spending any kind of money for anything indulgent. If it was for service of Thakurji, if it was for Guru Seva, everything, no problem. But in terms of devotees, all devotees were pretty austere. We obviously took care of people's health and everything, but nothing indulgent. So, there was a little guilt in my heart even about doing this, but I genuinely needed to take a break because I was doing kind of nonstop. And I remember when I first got to Nigeria, as I mentioned in that second series, I believe it was, a big thing for me was studying. I always like to study, Srila Prabhupada's books deeply, be able to do kind of deep sadhana. And I remember getting into a situation in Ghana where I wasn't getting as much time to study, but obviously from preaching a lot, it's kind of like the same thing. And also our sadhana was very good, so I had no complaints about being able to get up and do japa, and I was able to chant extra rounds every day, so that was an issue. But I liked also to have time for Swadhyay. Swadhyay means deep study. So I took a few books and I checked in the room, and it was a small room. It was clean, everything, but it was nothing fancy, obviously. And for eating wise, I had bought from the temple, I had some prasadam packed. I was only going to be there, I think I had planned to stay for 2 days. So I had bought enough, between fruits and everything else, and pakoras and some samosas, things that would last over a couple of days, I would be good, because obviously we couldn't eat out, right? So I was all settled for that. And I remember thinking, well, I got there early enough that I could, maybe go ahead and go swimming. So I thought, no, I won't do it today. I'll wait till tomorrow. And, I waited till the next day. I walked around a little bit, in Lomé at that section. And then I remember going back, taking rest that night, and everything was really peaceful. You could hear the waves from the ocean, and everything was really wonderful. Of course, we got up, during Brahma Muhurta hours, and I sat out. There wasn't a direct balcony from my room, but in the hotel itself, I came out of my room and walked like across a little, second floor patio area. I could come and sit right on the porch area that overlooked the ocean and everything. So I got up really early in the morning, went and I sat, and I could hear the waves. You couldn't see anything, but I could hear the waves. I was chanting, and then, obviously around 4:30, getting close to 5, you start to see people moving around, and especially I started seeing the ladies get prepared for the market, and people had torches out because it was still dark. And so it's just really, really wonderful, deep meditation. After that, I sat there for a while. Mosquitoes started to bother me a little bit, but I sat there for a while, and I was reading, I was studying, I remember that. Then I remember I went back, and I decided, well, I'll lay down for a little while. So I went back and laid down for a little bit, got back up, I had put on my swimming trunks and everything, and I came back out, and it was still a little bit early. So I thought I'd wait till it got a little hot. I took some breakfast, everything, sat there, and I was chanting again. Now, Krishna is always trying to teach us lessons, right? I don't care. I mean, sometimes we all feel like we want to be alone, and I very seldom felt like that. I always wanted to be around devotees. I never felt like, some inconvenience in me. I just need my own space, because especially during the preaching, everything was always so dynamic that the association with the devotees just enhanced everything. And we didn't have literally many arguments or any kinds of difficulties. There would be disagreements from time to time amongst devotees, and we would settle everything and bring them in. And, so we had grahastas now, so obviously from time to time, things like that would happen. But we would also, Rajalila was there, so there'd be counseling and, so anyways, long story short, there was no, desire not to be around devotees. It was just a chance to be alone, to read and study deeply without having really the managerial things to do in terms of the yatra. But anyway, I'm sitting there now and I'm chanting, and Krishna decides to teach me a lesson about this spirit even of wanting to be alone at all. So I'm sitting there and this other person comes. Now I'm like between looking at the book and reading a little bit, and then I would start to chant, because one of my habits used to be, and this was something that my Guru Parapadma later on would kind of instill. This is a very good way to chant. Actually, if you cannot have so much Harikatha that you've digested in your heart, then sometimes you can read something, right? Close the book and then chant while meditating on the sound of Sri Nam and on that Harikatha, because Harikatha and Harinam are the Rup and Swarup of Bhakti, right? So this is a very important lesson, that my Guru Maharaj taught me, but back at that time, I used to also do something similar. So I was in that process, reading a little bit, then I would close, I would try to remember verse something and chant, right? So while I'm there, this person comes and they don't sit right down on the bench, but they sit on the back of the bench and they only put their feet on the seat area right across from me. So now, I've still got on tilak and everything, and I've got on, I think, yogi pants now, and I have on a shirt and everything, but I have my swimming trunks underneath because I'm gonna go swimming, shortly. So anyway, the person, is there. So I finally look up, and it's this lady sitting there, right? This young lady sitting there, and she says, "Oh, I didn't want to disturb you or anything, right?" So I said, "Oh, okay, and she says, "So where are you from?" So I said, "Well, I'm from America originally, but I'm here and I'm staying in Ghana. We belong to the Hare Krishna movement." I said, "I know Hare Krishna. My sister goes to the temple regularly in Switzerland, I think she was from. My sister goes to the temple regularly in Switzerland." So I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know what, Hare Krishna? She says, yeah, I've gone there from time to time. Yeah, really nice. They have really good food, right? So I'm like, yeah, exactly. So she's talking and everything, and she's striking up this conversation. So I'm feeling a little bit awkward because, obviously as devotees, even, grahastha men and women, there has to be some decorum and some etiquette. So normally with brahmacharis or even grahastha men, men and ladies sit together alone someplace talking. So here it is, we're pretty much sitting there alone, everything talking, and she's an attractive person as well and everything. So we're sitting there and talking. So I'm not feeling as comfortable. So I'm not making eye contact really, but I'm speaking, and then when we're talking about Krishna consciousness, I'm excited, I'm preaching and everything. So anyways, she says, listen, I haven't eaten anything yet, and it's getting close to lunchtime. And then I check, and I say, oh, wow, yeah, I was going to go swimming and everything. Just, well, I just want to hear a little bit more about, your preaching here in Africa, Krishna consciousness, but I want to get some lunch. So, do you mind waiting a little bit? So I said, okay. So she went downstairs to, I guess, get something from the canteen, a little restaurant thing they had downstairs. And so I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I don't want it to get too blazing hot, before I go out to swim and everything. So as I'm contemplating all of this, and I'm packing up my books and everything, she comes back upstairs, and now I've started chanting again while I'm waiting for her. So she comes back up, she gets back in that same position, she puts her feet on the seat, sits on the back of the seat, and I'm chanting. So maybe because she's familiar, she didn't want to disturb me while I was chanting, right? But, all of a sudden I hear this like crunch. I don't know if you've eaten papadum, right? And papadums, how when you break them, they make that crunchy sound. So the crunch was so hard that I looked up. And as I looked up, right, this was like an extremely attractive young lady and everything. As I looked up, she had a fish, the whole, because they sell fish with the head still on it and everything else. And I guess she had fish and rice or whatever else she was eating. But all I saw was she had picked up the piece of fish and with the head on it, put the head of the fish in her mouth and bit it. So for me, that was like, okay, I'm out of here. I am so out of here. So I thought, wow, this is like, I couldn't even fathom something like this. So then she, kind of chewed, and she was spitting the bones and things over the veranda of the thing and everything. So I just, I said, it was really hard. And then the smell and everything else. So I was like, well, listen, let me give you a card. If you're ever in Accra, you could come by. We have a temple there. And you can get to meet some of our devotees and so forth. Then, of course, I mentioned, I was married and my wife was from America. She was originally from the Caribbean and so forth, Belize. And come by, you get to meet everybody, and then I was out of there. But then I was thinking the whole time that, two things. One is the whole idea of being alone as opposed to doing anything you want to do in the association of devotees is never as fruitful, for one. Because I did start to miss the devotees. When I looked at the atmosphere, it reminded me of how we were going out with the devotees on Sundays to the beach. And I wanted devotees, kind of to experience being in Togo. And then I thought maybe we could have even gone preaching while we're here more expansively. And that led to me actually later on coming back with Mahamantra Brajalila and maybe some other devotees. And we went to visit Mahamantra Prabhu's family. Some of his family lived in Togo, and to also do some preaching. So, but anyway, I decided to go ahead and go across and go swimming. So next adventure, and I think I'm going to end it here because I've probably gotten to about an hour here. But anyways, so I strut across the street, right? I'm kind of have been grossed out by the whole interaction there. And partly I'm also feeling some guilt that here I am alone. I've broken the decorum of being with a lady alone. Even though I'm grahastha, still I honored those things. So I'm not feeling comfortable, but now I'm happy. I'm getting ready to go swimming and everything. So I'm walking across the street and I'm greeting people, Haribol. People would always say either in local language or in French, because in Togo there's also French is there. But I would always respond, Haribol, Haribol. So I kept walking on the sand. And I was looking at the people. And as I was looking at the people, like the ladies who were selling goods and things on the beach, they were waving to me. But they were waving like this. So I would, Haribo, and I would wave back. And then there were some fishermen who were also a little ways down, and they also started waving. They were doing the two-handed wave like this. So I also waved back, Haribo, Haribo, right? So I'm feeling like this is super friendly. This is super nice. So I get to a certain area, and, I didn't have any valuables with me, so I just, put my yogi pants, rolled them up, took off the shirt, and, tied my Brahmin thread around my neck and everything so it wouldn't come off in the ocean, whatever. So, and I'm getting ready to go in, and I'm looking, and I'm thinking, yeah, this seems like a suitable place to go. Nobody's swimming. But one of the things that I thought, the reason nobody's here is because it's a weekday, and people are working and so forth, and maybe people don't do the beach, like on the weekdays like this. So, in the meantime, I'm hearing these voices at a distance, like, hey, 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 right? And I'm just Hariboling everybody, Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. And, I continue walking. I walk into the water a little bit. And, normally, sometimes when people go to the ocean, what you do is you wait for a wave to come. And when the wave comes, you run and you dive under the wave. The wave will go over your body. Then you come up, and that's how you break the whole idea of the water's going to be cold or not or whatever. The water wasn't that cold, actually. But anyway, so I got prepared to do that. And so I'm waiting for the wave to come. And all these people are still yelling and yelling and yelling. So I'm still Hariboling everybody on the side. But then I focus. Okay, I'm going to get ready to go in. So I see a wave coming. So I, run out, dive under the wave. When I dive under the wave, somehow or another, all of a sudden there's this I can feel like a crushing kind of feeling. And then I push down to the bottom, and I feel myself being dragged along like the pebbles and rocks on the bottom, and I start scraping and trying to stand up, and I can't, right? And then I feel myself going out further and further, and I'm trying to stand up because I know the water can't be that deep right there. So then I start pushing my way to the top. I get my way to the top. Just as I'm getting to the top, another wave is coming, right? So I don't want to dive headfirst to get under the wave, so I just kind of lay down and let it go over me, and that same thing happens. I start getting pulled back along the rocks. So then I realized, this is probably not a good thing. So I just wait till there's enough where I can see a little bit. The wave is washed back. I jump up. At that time, I'm got some scratches and stuff on my body and my face and everything. But I jump up and I kind of jog out enough that if the next wave comes in, I'm not going to get pulled back. But, as I'm walking out, I can feel the strength of the undertow. So when I finally get back up on the thing, I see people running towards me and everything like that. And a couple of the fishermen, they're saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I guess the guy spoke English. "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I see the ladies talking one to another kind of frantically and everything else. So at this point, because I was so stupid, right, that I didn't, investigate anything before I decided to go swimming there, which is the reason nobody's swimming there, because there's a heavy undertow, right, or riptide. So I'm like, okay, but I want to play it cool, so I just walk back up, and I'm okay, scratches on the face and on the arms, everything. I'm okay, Haribo. And I just walk back up, pick up my yogi pants, and walk back across to the hotel. So now I'm contemplating, after this whole experience between the Maya incident with the young lady, and now getting the undertow smacking of Krishna, whether I should just get in the car right now and attempt to drive back. So I said no. By the time I got back, it would be too late and everything. So I rested overnight, and I remember getting up early again and chanting in the morning. And then going back and laying down a little bit because I didn't want to, I get up pretty early and I didn't want to be driving and you start getting tired and I'm by myself. So I laid down a little bit. Then I remember going ahead and packing up and heading out. And on the way back, that scene kept playing out in my mind, this lesson. One, try to do everything in the association of devotees. And two, kind of don't think that, it's not a good thing to kind of inquire from people and check with people, is something safe to do or not? I kind of had this sense of invincibility because the whole time we've been preaching in Africa, I had never really encountered any serious danger. I'd never been, robbed. Of course, that'll come later on. I'll when we get to Zambia. But anyway, we had never encountered any kind of violence, any robbery. The only incident was the coup, and even during that time, we really didn't directly experience any severe danger. And we always felt we had so much support and other things that I never felt the sense of being in danger. So I kind of felt invincible, because other than that, I wouldn't have ventured to travel by myself somewhere, not knowing what the social environment is like in terms of crime, all these kinds of things. But I just didn't even think about that. And of course, as devotees, we always think, we're under the shelter of Guru and Krishna. And if you're serving, ultimately, Krishna is my protection. This is what is called Saranagati. Rakshishiti Goptrave Varanam Tadha. Right? That Krishna is my protector and my maintainer. So, this mentality was there. So, but still, I think Krishna was teaching a lesson. Still, do everything in the association of the devotees. And secondly, be a little mindful. Because I remember my Guru Maharaj, when it was coming to Y2K, and there was some panic going on about a few things. And I remember when Mataji had asked my Gurudev, he'd come to visit at that time, and she asked, well, what should we do to prepare for Y2K? My Gurudev says, be prudent and chant Hare Krishna. So, that's something that stuck with me all this time. So we've certainly exercised prudence in what we do, but chanting Hare Krishna is our shelter, right? But it doesn't mean that we lack being pragmatic or being prudent in dealing with the material world. Even Mahaprabhu told to Raghunath Das Goswami, Antra Nishtakara Bhaya Lokya Vyavyahara, that internally you should be absorbed bhajan, but with the external world, deal with it accordingly, right? Don't artificially I'm so absorbed, I have no relation with the material world at all. At the same time, we're still in the material world, right? So be prudent and chant Hare Krishna. So that was a good lesson for me to exercise prudence in things that I do. And at the same time, realizing that Krishna did protect me in both of those circumstances, right? I didn't really get any kind of, mundane involvement with this girl, and had enough etiquette, sense, and everything else to not entertain it beyond a certain point. And Krishna helped to assure that by revealing that, regardless of how, nice this person looked, still consciousness is really what is beautiful. And probably this person did have the potential for beautiful consciousness, but having still been part of the modes of nature and eating in that way and everything else, reveal that, beauty is only skin deep, but Krishna consciousness touches the soul. So, and then the incident with the ocean was that, there was a little bit of enjoying spirit there. Okay, you're studying and you have your own personal space and all these different things, and you're going to enjoy the ocean. So, Krishna on both accounts gave me two very, very good lessons. And, I kind of tried to put those in my patra, my container, and, have never forgotten them. So I think I've definitely gone over my hour here. We'll come back. There's still a lot more to go in Ghana. And then, of course, after Ghana, there'll be a period of coming back to America, and then again coming back to Africa, to Central Africa. So anyway, but there's still a lot to go in Ghana. And actually, while I was on the stream here now, Pujapat Shantamaraj was trying to call me. So I'm going to hang up and call him back and see if I can get some more details about things and add that into segment number 7. So Dandavat Pranam devotees, all glories to Shri Gaura Gadara Shri Radhavallabhji, my Thakurji. All glories to the lotus feet to my Guru Pada Padma, Nityalila Vishnu Pad, Paramhamsa Parivraj Gachaja, Ashtotar Sissimad, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. Onto the lotus feet of both my Param Guru Devs, Nityalila Pravishta, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada, and onto Nityalila Pravishta, Srila Bhakti Pradhan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, and onto our whole Guru Parampara. Dandavat Pranam devotees, Jaya Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Radhe Radhe.